Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. I'm super excited to be joined by Gill Gross, the presenter of Monday Match Analysis, and of course, co-host and presenter of a Tennis podcast with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Gill, how you doing, mate? It's a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Fazan. I'm great.
Yeah, perfect. It's just a pleasure, really. As I was saying to you before, big fan and love your videos. So really looking forward to getting into it. Hopefully, I'm not overawed by your tennis knowledge. So I'll try my best.
Nah, that won't happen.
Cool. So just to start off with, then I just wanted to touch upon the French Open. Obviously, just concluded, and we're in this little limbo phase between the French Open and Wimbledon. So I think it's a good time to, I guess, look at the findings from the French Open and then going into Wimbledon as well. So touch upon the French first. I mean, obviously, one of the biggest talking points is Novak winning his second French Open, 19th Grand Slam, second, a career Grand Slam as well. So winning each major at least twice, even. So, and also being able to beat Nadal on clay, the first to do it, and then go on to win the French Open, which was really impressive. He obviously had to come back from 2 sets to love down in two of his matches, but came out on top, which, being the mental giant he is, I guess, isn't a surprise. But I know you've mentioned in your videos that, and I agree, I think it's probably his worst surface. So I thought it was really impressive, and he definitely made some adjustments. But just wanted to get your kind of thoughts on it very, very quickly on how you thought he did overall, and what impressed you about his, I guess, run to the final, winning it in the end.
I think it's one of the best runs of his career at a Grand Slam. I mean, because I think what stands out about that win over Rafa is that I thought Nadal was, for at least until the fourth set where he had a big drop off, he was playing well. And, it didn't remind me of, let's say, 2015, where Rafa was just a shell of himself and every forehand was landing inside the service box. And there were even some issues in 2009 when Soderling beat him in a way that felt a little bit less sustainable and more redliney. But the way Novak kind of picked him apart and found certain things that were just giving Rafa a lot of trouble even on his best day was so impressive. And then, against Tsitsipas and Musetti, it did feel like, his mental strength was on display, and that, he's always searching for answers and he's never really mentally beaten in a match no matter what. And, in the same breath, he wasn't really that close to losing either of those matches, because I think in order to say, well, Novak escaped from a near-death experience, the other player needs to be close to winning a third set. And I don't know how close they really were. So he was the better player in both of them. And then the Berrettini match was also very memorable to me, with Matteo playing very well and Novak, I think, clearly feeling some stress on the court, getting through. The crowd was gone there, getting through that fourth set in the end, and being as emotional as he was just was also a moment that I think was memorable. So now Australia, French Open, a lot of things in play for Novak. 2021 could be a massive year after a year in 2020 where it felt, even though it was a good year for him, it felt a little bit disappointing with how the US Open went and how that French Open final went.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's you talked about the adjustments that he made against Nadal and the little kind of nuances that he added to his game that gave Rafa problems. I think one thing that was quite funny was clearly he had an issue with, I think last year with the drop shot, right, where he tried to overuse it maybe in the French Open last year in the final, got completely obliterated by Nadal in the first at 6-love, and then went on to losing straights. And he probably thought because the ball wasn't bouncing as much in colder conditions, it would be more effective. Obviously being the kind of less bouncy surface that clay is when it is in colder climates. But here, obviously, it was warm for the most part, and I thought he used it, but he used it sparingly, and he's definitely worked on it a lot more. And he's got better disguise, especially on the backhand drop shot, I thought, as well. And he utilized it, I thought, to great effect. And it's something that you could tell that it really bugged Rafa Nadal when he wasn't able to get to them, because he's someone who's clearly an athlete on the court. He prides himself on being this kind of warrior gladiator, especially on the clay and chasing down anything. And the fact that he wasn't able to get to it at times, I thought was definitely bugging him for sure. So that was one thing for me. And also, I think the other thing was returning wise. I mean, obviously we had a fantastic set in that third set, but some of the returns Novak was hitting, and I mean, we saw against Tsitsipas in the final as well, and he is arguably the best returner ever, I guess. And I think people won't mind me saying that. In that, the depth on the returns was just insane, and Nadal probably wasn't hitting as many first serves and not as pinpoint probably as he would have liked. And I think that's something that you have to impose on Novak, and that was the biggest differences for me. I mean, would you did you see that as well?
Well, I think when you hit a drop shot against Nadal, it better be a winner, because if he gets there, he does so well with it. And that was, I think, the big difference between the 2020 final and the 21 semi, is that Novak's drop shots were more often winners in the semifinal. And the reason I thought it was easier for him to deploy it is because it felt like he had multiple options and different ways to finish points, where in 2020, his forehand wasn't as good, and it felt like he was leaning on the drop shot as one of the few options he had to end the point, and to do damage. And that was, I think, the problem. But in this match, with his forehand firing and finishing many points at the net as well, it felt like the drop shot was just another option instead of one of the only options, and that was very key. And then the second thing, the returning, it becomes very much a one-on-one battle, the server versus the returner, and then we start the point. And just plain and simple, Nadal in the past on clay has been able to win that battle, or at least do a lot better in that battle than he was able to do in this last meeting, where Djokovic was not only making his returns, but making them to Nadal's backhand, which is just a massive advantage for Djokovic and a disadvantage for Nadal, because we see the biggest reason why Rafa, and the biggest advantage that Rafa is gaining over his opponents on clay recently, is the fact that his first forehand is so deadly behind his serve. And as a result, he wins a large majority of the short points, the points played between 0 and 4, even more so 0 through 3 shots. And Novak was able to reverse that trend, unlike the Rome final of this year, and unlike last year's Roland Garros match, because of the way that Djokovic was returning against Nadal's serve. Whether all the credit goes to Novak or all the credit goes to Nadal's worst serving, that's not ever how it is. It's always a combination of both.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say it's always somewhere in between, isn't it? You can never quite lay the blame on just one aspect. But yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously the 1+ shot, that forehand by Nadal, he just wasn't quite able to dictate early doors in the rallies, and that made a big difference, I thought.
Absolutely.
For sure. What about, I guess, we talked about Novak and how impressive he was, but clearly someone who's come out of it probably won't see it as a great tournament, because he would have thought, I was 2 sets to love up in the final. I had it there. Maybe I could have gone on and done it. And you could see the emotion kind of not on his face, because you couldn't see it because it was buried in his towel and he was just weeping. I know actually he'd found out, was it half an hour, I think, before that his grandmother had passed away. So that was really sad to hear, wasn't it? As well.
I know. Yeah, I know some journalists reported that he knew coming onto the court, but his statement didn't say that. So I think that some people were just misreading that, and I would assume based on when his grandmother ultimately passed, my guess would be that he didn't know when he took the court, but still a crushing day overall. And thoughts and prayers with his family, because it was upsetting. I hope he takes the positive away from his run at the French Open, because he made it a step further than he ever had. He was 0-3 in semifinal matches. He was able to get over that hurdle, a big win over Alexander Zverev, and he should feel very confident on the clay moving forward for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's the first Greek player ever to make a Grand Slam final, so I thought that was really impressive. Obviously, Maria Sakkari almost did it as well, but she didn't quite manage to get over the line, get to that final. But Stefanos Tsitsipas looks someone who, I think from the next gen stars, in my opinion, looks like someone who might be ready. And I felt like he showed a lot of good application in those first 2 sets, then obviously fell away. Is there anything that you might think, maybe mentally there's something that needs to be tweaked, or as you're saying, I guess mainly for the most part, it's all positive, right? I mean, he made his first Grand Slam final. A lot of people would say, well, hold on, you might have been overawed by the occasion. A lot of people, when they meet the big three in a final, they don't manage to take them to five or win the first two sets of a final in their maiden Grand Slam final, right? So the fact that he managed to apply himself and kind of acquit himself as well as he did, I thought was really impressive against someone in Novak who maybe had a little bit of a hangover against Nadal from that previous match, but still had beaten the best ever on clay, coming in phenomenal form, and to kind of switch the script straight away early doors, I thought was really impressive. So, kind of in your opinion, do you think for him there's, I mean, he can only take a huge amount of positives from this going forward now, surely.
Yeah, he started well in all three of his latter three matches against Medvedev and Zverev and Djokovic. Every time he took the court, he was ready to go right away, and he didn't have any trouble with that early match nerves. I guess the flip side is the hardest will always be to close and to find the finish line and to get through it. That's always going to be harder than anything else. And it was two matches in a row where he was up 2-0, and against Zverev he won the fifth, but he still had that blip midway through the match where he just needed to keep going and he couldn't quite maintain his level. So that happened twice in a row. But overall, I just think it's almost to be expected. There are some people who don't go through this at all, and the growing pains when it comes to handling pressure aren't really there. Pete Sampras and Boris Becker and Nadal, I think Djokovic, I think that 08 Australian Open, that was his first major final. So some people don't have that growing pain, but most do. So I think that from Stefanos' perspective, it's like, this is just kind of how it works, that you need to lose those matches before you're ready to win them. And we saw, especially when you're facing the big three, Dominic Thiem, Daniil Medvedev, and now Tsitsipas, they've all learned the hard way. It's going to be hard to show up to your first major final and beat Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic in that match.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny, isn't it? Because these guys, I guess the big three, being the generation that they are, it's a lot harder for these younger guys to come through. And I think that's definitely something that going forward, it'll be interesting to see who can win a Grand Slam from the next gen, and how many as well can they go forward and be dominant like these guys have been. But the biggest question I have for you as as a Rafa fan as well, is, I mean, it was an incredible performance from Novak as we've gone over, but for me, and maybe I'm being a bit kind of doom and gloom about it, but I'm thinking, look, the fortress has been breached, and Nadal now on clay doesn't look as unbeatable as he did. Going into the French Open, I had thought the gap had closed more than it had in the last few years. I did think he'd still win. I just thought, look, these guys coming through, Tsitsipas, Djokovic especially, I thought those two, after performing really well on the clay court swing, especially Tsitsipas, and Djokovic is there or thereabouts, I just thought, look, they're going to be there and it's going to be tough, but he'd come through. What does it mean for him? I'll say specifically on clay going forward now, or at the French. Is he still, for example, next year? I know it's quite far ahead, but I mean, what do you think in terms of going forward in kind of in the next couple of years? Is he going to go into that still the favorite? Is he going to have still a big percentage chance of winning that, or is it now a case of, hold on, you just lost in the semis, and now you're looking a bit more beatable? And he didn't have an amazing clay court swing; it was decent, but by his standards, it was okay. It wasn't amazing. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I hope we get Nadal Djokovic at Roland Garros 2022. I mean, it'll be that'll be one that everyone would be very much excited for, including myself, and I'm sure you as well. I mean, there are some things that Rafa is going to need to do better in next year if he wants to win, and I think it starts with the serve. It just wasn't right the entire time. You go back to the back injury in Australia and you wonder if that was it. Although at the same time, he has been tweaking his serve technique for the better part of the last 3 years, and that tinkering might be too much, and he needs to figure out something and stick with it, perhaps. whatever it is and however he's going to fix it, it's going to be hard for him in especially with the physical limitations that he now has. He can't run forever anymore, and he used to be able to. He's going to need to serve better. That's where it starts. I ultimately thought that most of his game was in a place that was good enough to win the French Open and even beat a great version of Novak. I think most of his game was in a good enough place to do that, but the serve just wasn't. And that's, I know that that's taking a macro question and making it pretty micro, but that's kind of how I feel looking back on Nadal's clay court season, is that ultimately he wasn't hitting his serve well enough.
No, I agree. And it's something that doing live streams of matches, I was ripping my hair out and really ranting about it as he'd serve double fault after double fault, which I'm not used to seeing. Him serving kind of at least six double faults in a match, and I'm thinking, what's going on? Like, this isn't the Rafa that I'm used to. And I've seen him do it in Masters tournaments and ATP 250s, and I'm thinking, okay, fine, that happens. But when it came to the slams, it wasn't really an issue. But then in the French Open, that first match when I was watching it, I just thought this is a problem. I think he was 5-2 down to Popperin in that first set, and he managed to go on and win it 7-5 that first set of the first round. I remember watching that thinking, okay, he's come back, that happens. But there was something in my mind saying he cannot serve like this for the whole tournament. And he did. And he still managed to make the semis, but it just was not sustainable. And I agree with you. Like, against the best returner on tour at the moment, you just can't get away with it. And the fact that he actually had some chances shows how good he is on clay, but it's not sustainable. And look, I mean, we're not going to be talking about him in Wimbledon because he's not going to be playing there. But going into, say, the US Open, I think that's something that I agree with you 100%. Like, it needs to be tweaked. I think maybe he's trying to go slightly bigger on it because Novak, for example, has worked on his serve and he's made it into more of a weapon and kind of molded his serve more on what Roger has been able to do for years, because that's how you get more longevity in your career, by making the points shorter. But I don't know quite if Rafa has that kind of room to move into that. So it's an interesting one. So hopefully he can, though. This is a very generic question. You're going to hate this one, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Novak Djokovic, right? So surely after this now, he must be in a position where you think he is the favorite to end up on the most slams. I'm not going to ask you whether he will be the greatest ever, because I think that is very subjective, and I think each three of them will have a debate to say, you know what, we're the best and their fans, etc. But surely, I mean, his game, how he's molded himself into this machine where it looks like now he's slender, he's athletic, he's adapting his game for longevity. The forehand is working a lot more aggressively. The serve is more of a weapon. The points are shorter. The drop shot he's added into it. Nadal, like, with injuries as well, and also just being still having to grind at times. Federer obviously is nearly 40. I mean, surely he's the favorite now to kind of end up on the most now.
Yeah, I think he's a heavy favorite to finish his career as the most accomplished men's tennis player of all time. And I am curious to see if it gets to this point, and we're not there yet. But let's say he wins his 21st slam. Let's say that passes Federer and Nadal, assuming they're still at 20. How much distance is he going to be able to actually separate himself there? Because now you have new challenges of pushing yourself kind of through that finish line, not just past it, but through it at in the mid 30s, and that'll be very interesting to see. It's going to be, when it comes to questions like this, it's going to be, you say it's subjective. Well, I think the Novak fans are going to say, no, it's objective. It's objective, because that's going to support, if Novak has all the numbers, of course, they're going to say, well, no, it's about stats. It's about objectivity. And then, I think the Federer and the Nadal camp, who will not have the stats on their side, will say, no, it's subjective. And I don't know if I could say that either one is wrong. And that's kind of the stance that I've been taking, is that I'm not going to, if you think if someone is your is your GOAT, I'm not really going to sit here and argue with you, especially because I think the best way to reduce these three's uniqueness and their accomplishments is to put them in a list. To put them 1, 2, 3 to me is I don't feel the need to do it. I find it unnecessary, and I'm not judging. If you want to make a list out of this, I don't judge anyone who wants to do that, but I don't feel the need to make this into a list. I'm happy to have conversations about how Novak's return is the greatest of all time, or how his style adapted to different surfaces better than anyone else, or how Roger Federer played shots that no one really ever plays, and that he has the most tools in the shed, and he keeps you on your toes more than anyone else, or how Nadal's mentality is the mentality that you want your kids to play with, and that's how you want your ideal tennis player. That's how you want them to compete out there. I'm happy to have all these conversations about what makes the three of them unique and different. I just don't feel the need to put them in a list.
Yeah, you put them horizontally instead, don't you, Gill, to make sure they're next to each other, all on the same platform. if you can have a platform of first, second, third, you just make it equal and just put them all on one.
And I'm happy to put like Bjorn Borg on that platform also. Yeah. And, I'm happy to have the conversation that Pete Sampras belongs on that platform. Like I am. It's not just the big three and, shying away from the fan bases. It's honestly that I don't feel the need to list these things.
No, I agree. That's fair. Okay. Yeah, Gill, thank you so much for being on, though. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything you want to touch upon before we finish up?
No, this has been super fun. And yeah, I mean, a great conversation. Hit on many, many topics, and congratulations on the growth of your channel and all your success. Still in the first year here, but you're on your way up for sure, no doubt.
Thank you, really appreciate it, guys. Of course, please go over to Gill Gross on YouTube as well. Subscribe to his channel. I'm pretty sure most people who watch this watch your channel. I've checked on the YouTube analytics, and one of your channel is definitely one that my subscribers go to. So I'm pretty sure they already have. But if you haven't, please do go over. Gill has a fantastic analysis on his channel, and also the 3 podcasts that he does as well with Amy Lundy and Joel Drucker as well, which is really cool. Really good analysis on, of course, the big 3, Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic. If you're a fan of any of those 3, go and subscribe to that as well. And I'm sure you're on all good podcast platforms as well, aren't you? I'm assuming.
Not the bad ones, only the good ones. But
exactly,
that's right.
Yeah, any of the bad ones won't find him there, so don't bother looking. Exactly. No, thank you so much, guys. I do really appreciate it. Massively enjoyed it, and hopefully we can catch up later in the year. I know you're a busy man, so maybe after Wimbledon at some point, or who knows, towards the US Open, we can have another catch up. But yeah, all the best, and thank you so much.
Absolutely, Fazan. No problem. Anytime. Thanks.